There is no kind of ideal laboratory to develop a comprehensive view on this dynamics of corporate governance.
There's one question pending from the gentleman about whether there's confusion around the definition of shareholder value. Maybe.
I mean, can I just briefly touch on the last point? I mean, you ask about corporate governance of startup companies and so on and so forth, and I agree with Igor. I mean, startup companies or SMEs as they're known and so on, I'm not entirely sure that corporate governance is what they are bothered when they start up their life. What they bother is, what they care about is the lack of funding and the lack of finance to grow the business. And whereas in the past, as the Kerry review has rightly pointed out, equity market provided that, it's no longer the case. And banks do no longer, and this is where the intervention needs to go. And I think the BES, the Department of Business Innovation and Skill, I think with the previous government said, we need to help those businesses. So that's their first priority rather than corporate governance. And it's true that as the business grow and as the business develop, of course, the mechanisms, the structure will vary depending on the size of the company and so on. So my point is that I will turn the question on its head. And I would say that those sort of companies, in terms of survival, care about finance, care about how to survive, how to get the money to start up and get to the next level and so on. And the question is whether the equity markets provide them with that, and currently they don't. So that's an important point. With relation to the gentleman's question, is there a confusion? I think there is a confusion, and but I'm not entirely sure if I call it a confusion. I would. Is it a strategy? Is it a goal? I mean, depending who you ask, depending what sort of company and what sort of the company stand for, and what is the company's, if you wish, objectives and so on, whether it's a public or private and so on and so forth. And I highlighted in the beginning that the question of shareholder value almost sort of assumes that shareholder value is shareholder profit, but it's not necessarily the case. Because if you ask a lot of investors today, they tell you that there are other issues that they care about, and this is where you have other development of other indices in relation to environmental and so on and so forth, sustainable and so on and so forth. The idea is that it's not just profits and so on. So I'm not entirely sure that the answer is there a confusion? I think there is various interpretations for this question, and it depends on how you look at it. But it's also, and I'll finish with this, partly to blame with what the current law, or at least the Companies Act, suggests, because we call it enlightened shareholder value, which is kind of sort of suggests that it's not shareholder supremacy, but it's not stakeholder, and so it's somewhere kind of in between, but it's actually shareholder supremacy. So I think that's the kind of confusion, that we use wrong terminology to acknowledge different things. So because the debate is like, oh, do we have enlightened shareholder value? I think the shareholders are unenlightened if directors are, at the moment, according to the law, not according to anything else, it's a normative question, according to law, if they take stakeholders into account rather than them. So I think that's part of the problem. I'll finish with it.
I like to think we're fairly